down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled and liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And thank you all to everyone who is showing up. I'm seeing a lot of activity over on Rumble. I'm telling you, that's the place to be. Got a lot of great patriots and catriots out there who are showing up and starting to hit the chat. So if you happen to be on one of the other platforms, go over to my Rumble account and Rumble channel and pick up with the rest of us. But sign up, get an account. It's free. And if you like what the show, then you can obviously subscribe to it. I'm at 168 subscribers right now. I would love to get into the 170s for sure. All right. So tonight we've got a couple of really, really big things that have happened this week. Number one is the fact that I had some of my listeners, a couple of them, they know who they are, have been asking about this absolutely wonderful Constitution of the United States from the Institute on the Constitution. It is a Saddleback leather, and it is nice and stitched inside in the stitching here on both sides. So I've, when I first tried to get this out, everybody was like, hey, how do I go and do this and support the show? And how do I buy? So it was a bit of a convoluted process. I actually have a link now. It's part of my website. It is a redirect. It is constitution.whiskeymusings, and that's all one word, all lowercase, .online, and it goes right to the page for the Constitution that is sold by the Institute on the Constitution and helps support the show. It already does all of the linking and everything else. So all you have to do is go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. You'll drop right to the page where you can just go ahead and buy the Constitution direct. And it is awesome. It picks up. I mean, this is buddy tested and buddy approved. It's got nice little rounded corners. He talks about that a lot in the chat, and it's got great pages. You can even look on their website. They talk about the 100-year guarantee that goes with this. Now, granted, obviously, it's not if you abuse it or whatever, but if there's a manufacturing defect, they guarantee it for 100 years. The paper inside is actually water resistant and that kind of stuff too. But check it out. Go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. and check that out and take a look. I also have a link. Well, let me go ahead and do their spot here. So, the Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined by the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link. Now, here's where it changes. My affiliate link is iotc.whiskeymusings, all one word, .online. To sign up, and while you're there, take a moment to look through their other course materials and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings, all one word, .online. to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or, as I pointed out, if you want to purchase this, you can go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Go and check them out today, and I thank them for allowing me to be an affiliate. It's awesome. They have some great materials. They've got some awesome books, and that kind of stuff. So it's really, 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 really good. I can't talk enough about them. All right. Now, requisite, of course, to talk about out of tonight's America glass. This is the America shot glass. Out of this shot glass, I have my typical favorite, the Jameson Black Barrel Irish Whiskey. And the reason why is because this is actually the most of the bottles that I have right now. So yeah, that's why I am drinking it. Also, if you don't want to buy anything from the Institute on the Constitution, I also have a store. Now, I kind of leaked this on the Mark K show earlier. I have, and even on social media, but I have some new, new to me samples, but this is the GETTR that has my logo on it. And just take a look at how brilliant that logo actually is. That is absolutely awesome. So this is a GETTR. It's 2-ply, and it's one of those things that goes over your neck. It's really cool. And then I also got a sample of a set of men's jogger pants. And this is again, it's a brilliant logo. They did a really good job. This isn't like an iron-on in this particular case, or with the GETTR. They actually inked this into the fabric. I am really impressed with these guys. They changed over. They went from Teespring over to Spring. And when they made that change, they actually changed over some of their processes. And of course, that's where this comes from too. The When I Drink, I Think Whiskey Musings. So do me a favor, if you want to get some decent, some good clothing, I'm going to say, some good quality stuff, check out the store.whiskeymusings.online. Notice a pattern? Everything is going to whiskeymusings.online. And speaking about that, one of my top number one fans, he's done a lot for me. He asked me today if I have an email address. So I went ahead and set up an email. So if you want to send me an email, rather than following me on social media and posting stuff out in the public, if you want to send me an email and just have something direct to me, it is fans, F-A-N-S, fans at, guess what? whiskeymusings.online. Whiskey Musings, all one word, .online. There you go. So there you go, buddy. There's your email address. And don't worry, I am working on the other thing. I'm trying to figure everything out with that. All right. So that is all of the wonderful new announcements, new things that are going on. Hey, don't forget this weekend, speaking of new things, this weekend is Armed Forces Day on Saturday. So I will have a Armed Forces tribute for them. Because obviously I support our military, our firefighters, our police officers, as do most conservatives, I think. So all of that, come on Saturday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And you can come on in and watch the show, or you can pick up the recording, but it is Armed Forces Day. And for those of you that aren't familiar, there's actually 3 days that are typically for the armed services. You have Armed Forces Day, which is when you talk to people who are currently serving. You have Veterans Day, that is the holiday for veterans like myself. And you have Memorial Day, which is to commemorate those who have lost their lives in service to our country. So those 3 days are all separate, and they are all three are very important. Okay. Armed Forces Day is coming up. So, that's this Saturday. Anyway. All right. So tonight I kind of want to talk, and to be honest, I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to be insensitive on this. But the Buffalo shooter, I announced it on Saturday. We've had some things come out about this individual. And the thing that is really the most disgusting to me about this particular situation has to be the reaction from the political left and how they are using this as a crutch for political purposes. And one of the things that, back in the Obama area, and I can't remember if it was Rahm Emanuel or, oh gosh, I couldn't even think of his name. Shoot. Anyway, I can't remember the guy's name, but he made a comment about, with regards to never let a crisis go to waste. And that seems to be the mantra of the Democrat Party. They never let a crisis go to waste. So what I want to do for tonight to start off with, most of the time I do start off with something patriotic, and this is kind of patriotic. And I know that there's a couple people in the chat right now that may not appreciate the person who wrote this book. However, it does have some very interesting points that I'm going to read. And this is from Mark Levin's Liberty and Tyranny. This is a conservative manifesto from him. This is about 12 years ago. Okay. And I just want to read a few key points from the beginning of this book that is apropos to today's setup. So the first thing that I want to read is this is on page 3 in the book. Like the founders, the conservative also recognizes in society a harmony of interests, as Adam Smith put it. The rules of cooperation that have developed through generations of human experience and collective reasoning that promote the betterment of the individual and society. This is characterized as ordered liberty, the social contract, or, quote, the civil society. In the civil society, the individual is recognized and accepted as more of an abstract statistic or a faceless member of some group. Rather, he is a unique, spirited being with a soul and a conscience. He is free to discover his own potential and pursue his own legitimate interests, tempered, however, by a moral order that has its foundation in faith and guides his life and all human life through the prudent exercise of judgment. As such, the individual in the civil society strives, albeit imperfectly, to be virtuous, that is, restrained, ethical, and honorable. He rejects the relativism that blurs the lines between good and bad, right and wrong, just and unjust, and its means and ends. And he goes on here to kind of breaks it down a little bit further, but that was one aspect of it. Now, the other side of the coin is what he calls the modern liberal. The modern liberal believes in the supremacy of the state, thereby rejecting the principles of the Declaration and the order of the civil society, in whole or in part. For the modern liberal, the individual's imperfection and personal pursuits impede the objective of a utopian state. In this, modern liberalism promotes what French historian Alexis de Tocqueville, I'm going to have a hard time with that one, but described as a soft tyranny, which becomes increasingly more oppressive, potentially leading to a hard tyranny, which is some form of totalitarianism. As the word liberal is, and it's in its classical meaning, the opposite of authoritarian, it is more accurate, therefore, to characterize the modern liberal as a statist. Now, I read that because of the fact that with this horrific and honestly unimaginable act, the left has pushed, and you've heard a lot of the right side pundits. I mean, Mark Levin, Dan Bongino, I'm sure Ben Shapiro has talked about it. We know Tucker Carlson has talked about it. But the left is trying to paint the right as the reason for why this individual did what they did. Now, supposedly this guy posted a 180-page manifesto. And I tried, believe me, I wanted to try and get the manifesto itself, but unfortunately I was unsuccessful in my pursuit of it. However, I did find some people that did. And so tonight I'm going to show you bits and pieces and explain where the left has gone wrong in their reasoning on this. First of all, I do want to say, though, that the left, of course, being the people that they are, and I just realized I'm going to have to update all my social media that's showing up down here because I've got True Social now too. Forgot about that. But the left has decided to jump on the bandwagon and, of course, cause all kinds of trouble because, as that individual of Obama's party used to say, never let a crisis go to waste. So let me show you this headline from the Daily Caller. It only took about 180 minutes for Democrats to try to capitalize on the Buffalo shooting. Okay, think about that for a second. Okay, most of the time conservatives will be the ones that will stand up and say, you know what? This is completely wrong. They'll condemn it. Contrary to popular belief, Trump did condemn any of the neo-Nazis and all of those supposedly fine, very fine people. That was a hoax. Most of the time, a conservative, and this is part of the reason why I read out of Mark Levin's Liberty and Tyranny in the beginning, is that most conservatives, and I'm going to even just take a stretch and say all conservatives are this way. We are the type to focus on individualism. We are the type to condemn horrific acts like this. We don't use them as a stepping stone to get what we are looking for. Okay. That is in the Dems camp. And of course, we've got Adam Shifty Schiff, who is up here. And he put in this in Twitter. 2 mass shootings in 24 hours in Milwaukee and Buffalo, the latter killing 10 people. I'm heartbroken and I'm angry. Angry that the GOP continues to block even the most basic gun safety measures. We can stop this. We can save lives. Republicans just refuse to. Cowards. All right. Now, I'm just going to point, I'm going to address a few things from this tweet throughout the program tonight. And I really need you to kind of think about his tweet and what he is saying here. But he's talking about the GOP, meaning the Republican Party, blocking even the most basic gun safety measures. That's number one. We can stop this. Point number two. And he's saying that we can save lives. I'm going to show you how his thought process is incorrect in that manner. So again, it only took them 180 minutes for that, especially for that tweet to pop up. And there's several other tweets that have gone on throughout this. And you've also heard, I'm sure, the clips from Chuck Schumer and all of those people. I can't tell you how wrong these people are. So let me explain something to you. In Mark Levin's book, and this is true, he talks about the types of isms that are out there, the ists, the Marxist, the communist, the socialist, the Leninites, the fascists, all of these people, even including the Nazis from Hitler, from Germany, They are all leftist authoritarian ideology. Period. Okay? There's no way that you can argue in any other way, shape, or form that these particular ideologies are not authoritarian. You cannot, and even there are some people who talk about, oh, well, the Nazis were ultra right wing. I actually argue no, because they were on the authoritarian side, that they were actually left wing. But the key difference here is the fact that the Nazis, which Nazi is a shortening of National Socialist, Hitler hated socialists and communists themselves. That is a historical fact. The thing is that he adopted the word socialist and he turned it into a new definition, which again is a tactic of the left, because if you control language, you can control thought. If you control thought, you control the narrative. You control language, then narrative, then thought. And you become authoritarian. So I actually argue that even the Nazis, were leftist ideologies. Okay. Now, the funny thing about this is that the left has continually gone after the right, and in particular, certain people like Dan Bongino, the post-millennial, Tucker Carlson, Rush Limbaugh. They used to all go after, or they do all go after every single one of these individuals. And they try to tell you it's because the right talks about things like racism and totalitarianism and authoritarianism. But it's not. It's the regimes that you're talking about in terms of the Marxists, the fascists, the, all of those ists that I listed out, which Mark Levin calls a statist. So from now on, I'm going to just talk about the statist. Okay, so the statists who want the totalitarian regimes are literally all on the left, because everything that a statist believes in is counterintuitive to the whole concept of libertarianism, individual freedom, individual responsibility. And the conservatives are only focused realistically on law-abiding individuals. That the idea of individual freedom means that I can do what I want as long as I don't interfere with someone else. And that's what true individual freedom is. Now, the thing that's funny about this, or that's, I'm not going to say ironic on this, but the thing that's really odd is the way that the left and the Democrat politicians have all jumped on this idea that this guy who committed this horrific act is against, or is from the right, I should say. So here's the thing. Then let me show you this. This is from Town Hall. This was taken on May 16th. As Twitter takes to blaming Tucker Carlson for the shooting, the manifesto that the man allegedly wrote confirms the suspect is no fan of Fox News. Now, in the manifesto, the shooter actually talks about how he believes that the news, in particular Fox News, is a bad, a totally horrible thing. He doesn't want to recognize it. Now, it's interesting that he doesn't mention like CNN or MSNBC. He focuses on Fox News in particular. Okay. So how the left can conveniently forget that fact when it's pretty much public knowledge, okay? How they can forget that fact and not report on this is another indication of the mainstream media's bias and trying to cover up the facts and the evidence and the truth. Now, we also have so we also have some other people that are out there who are the finders of truth. And so I'm going to depend on them because I couldn't find the manifesto myself. I'm going to depend on them for what's contained in the manifesto. And I'm fairly certain that they're actually true. So not only did the manifesto talk about Fox News, but it also talks about some other tenets of conservatism that did not align with the shooter's ideology. So this comes from Twitter also, and this is Cernovich, however you pronounce it. And I got to make sure I click on the right one. Otherwise I'm going to lose you guys. All right. So this is a tweet that he read the manifesto. He was able to get a hold of it and he read the manifesto. And this is some of the highlights that Cernovich pulled. Okay. The first one is that he did a chart of the Jewish people and included Cernovich under the quote troll Jew. He has a rejection of Christianity, which, believe it or not, most conservatives do fall into some form of religious background or belief. He had an admission in there that he is authoritarian left wing. Now, I'm going to kind of modify that just a little bit. Yes, he does call himself authoritarian left wing, but he also calls himself possibly right wing as well. And I'll show you that in just a second. He talks about how he is a hybrid Nazi and that he follows green nationalism. Okay. Now the interesting thing about this is none of this is coming out in the mainstream media, and it's not being talked about on any of the left-wing sites. None of the Democrat politicos are talking about this at all. In fact, they all just refer to him as a white supremacist, which he was, admittedly. And that's admittedly by his own manifesto. Okay. So he talks about himself being an ist. Again, one of those statist ideologies that are wrapping up. And in fact, Tom Elliott, and again, all these links, you want to look at all this stuff yourself, see where I'm getting this. All of the links are below in the description of the video. But Tom Elliott did a wonderful piece on this, and he actually got a hold of the manifesto, and he pulled out some excerpts and posted them again on Twitter. Let me show you this. So here he posts, the Buffalo Killer says he is a fascist, a racist, and a proud anti-Semite. Okay. Now, this again is reportedly from the manifesto's writer. Now, whether or not this manifesto was written by this guy, whether he had help, whether he copied it, and actually inside the manifesto, he does talk about admiring some other shooters and mass shooting suspects and criminals around the world. Okay. So he obviously was very disturbed and deranged. And I'll get to that a little bit more here in just a second. But he goes through a series of questions and then answers them. And in this, he says, are you a fascist? And he answers himself, yes, fascism is one of the only political ideologies that will unite whites against the replacers. Since this is what I seek, calling me a fascist would be accurate. Okay. Now, he talks about, are you a white supremacist? He answers yes. Are you a racist? He says yes, because he believes in the differences of capabilities between races. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, a conservative does not think this way. A conservative does not think this way, period. Okay. He says, are you intolerant? Sure. The last virtues of a dying nation are tolerance and apathy, and I want none of it. Okay. Then under anti-Semite, he answers with a bold yes, with, a couple exclamation points. I want to point out to you, there is a group of individuals in particular who have pushed out anti-Semitic rhetoric in the House of Representatives today. They are colloquially known as the Squad. And if you look at Ariana Presley, you look at Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib in particular, all three of them have made statements that are considered anti-Semitic. Okay? All three of them are Democrats. This is not a right-wing individual. This is not a conservative. Okay? Now, a little bit farther down, whoops, I got to scroll, so excuse me just a second. All right. So a little bit farther down, he says that he wants no part of political conservatism and is open to being called a socialist. Again, another one of those ists that turned into that again, Mark Levin says is a statist or an authoritarian ideology. Now he directly says, "Are you a conservative?" And he says, "No. Conservatism, is corporatism in disguise. I want no part of it." He talks about the LGBTQ crowd, and he asks himself, "Are you homophobic?" And he says, "I believe that the problems involving the LGB," and he literally drops the T, "are very insignificant. If one is actually part of the LGB or LGB group and they are loyal to their people, that's fine with me." So he's not necessarily homophobic. However, he does call out transgenderism. Transgenderism, however, is a mental illness and should be addressed as such. Okay. Now, then he asks himself, "Are you right wing?" And he goes, "Depending on the definition, sure." Then he gets asked, "Are you left wing?" Or he asks himself, "Are you left wing?" And he answers, "Depending on the definition, sure." So the same answer as to whether he's left wing or right wing. Then he asks himself the question, "Are you socialist?" And he says, "Depending on the definition." And he goes, "Worker ownership of the means of production?" And he questions himself. "It depends on who those workers are, their intentions, and who currently owns the means of production. Their intentions and who currently owns the state and their intentions." So in other words, he doesn't really know what he is, other than the fact that further down in the manifesto, he does call out that he has socialistic tendencies, and he has been living under those tendencies since he was about 12 years old. So literally, he is basically saying that I don't match up with anybody, period. And that's pretty much evident. He talked about, in particular, after the deed was done, that he wanted to make sure that nobody tried to assign him to any kind of party. Now, the funny thing about this is that he was known to law enforcement, and just about every modern day shooter has all been known to law enforcement. They have been on some person's radar somewhere, whether it's at the federal level, the state level, or the community local level. And the interesting thing about this, and Adam Schiff says he wants to end this. Here's one of the things that I say Adam Schiff should do and support. If you want to end these things, it's pretty simple. Hold criminals accountable. You cannot sit here and follow the ideology that criminals by themselves get let off easy, that you put in Democrat district attorneys who give out light sentences, or judges like Ketanji Brown Jackson, who give out obvious light sentences, as Senator Cruz pointed out during her confirmation hearing. If you want to end these kinds of things, you've got to take a stand on the law. You have to take a stand on law and order. And this is not what Democrats want. Democrats don't want law and order. This has been shown multiple times throughout our recent history, even as far back as the riots that occurred throughout the summer of what I think somebody colloquially called it the Summer of Love. Jenny Durbin down in Seattle, if I remember correctly. But these are not people who want to hold anyone accountable. In fact, if you look at how the Democrats respond to all kinds of questions, it's always somebody else's fault. Even though, for an example, Joe Biden, in one of his campaign speeches, said, the buck stops here. It stops with me. He has yet to take accountability for any of the things that he's been doing. It has always been a blame game toward Trump and the Republicans in terms of the political parties. This is the actions of people who do not want to live by the law and under responsibility or accountability. So even though we have this person, this individual who is a white supremacist, who happened to use an AR-15 in this horrific event, everything else that is about this guy speaks completely toward the left and their ideologies and their desires. Everything that they have all speaks that direction. And even so much as the idea of the white supremacy part, if it wasn't white supremacy, if it was just plain old racism and hate, you don't have to look very far. Because if you look at the people like, for an example, Joy Reid, she literally hates white people. By her thoughts and her actions on her show, she has said on multiple occasions that she hates white conservatives. Okay. If you look at things like abortion and the idea of the right to life, which is a religious thought process, a conservative thought process, they hate that too. They want to make it to where they can control the abortion narrative and control the individuals and force even religious organizations to support things like abortion. These are all the characteristics of leftist ideology, and these are all characteristics of individuals who are following the authoritarianism. These are all characteristics of the ideologies that get wrapped up in Mark Levin's statist mention. Now, coming out of this, and there's been a lot of conversation about this on the right, okay, there's or blaming of the right for this. The shooter did mention in his manifesto something called the Great Replacement Theory. And a lot of people on the conservative side, they didn't really understand it, and they had to research it. And I'll admit, I had to research it too. I kind of thought it might have something to do with maybe the Great Reset, but I was wrong in that. The Great Replacement Theory is an idea that in its purest form, in initial form, is the idea that the Jewish population is trying to replace the white, Western white culture for people of color. That's the thought process. And that's what the manifesto and what this individual claims, if he wrote it, claims to be a part of. That in his mind, that's what's going on. Now, you'll notice that it is, first of all, in order to even follow that theory, you've got to be anti-Semitic in some kind of way, because, of course, you are blaming a particular religion and a culture in order to justify the actions that you're about to take. Okay. But if you also take a look at other organizations and other people, for an example, the idea that the Great Replacement Theory is even occurring, okay? Dan Bongino did an awesome job. He had a montage. If you have a chance to pass from today, the montage is toward the end of the video, but check it out on Rumble, of a bunch of Democrats that have talked about the Great Replacement idea for many, many years. And I'm talking probably, as early as maybe 2013, I think, which, 7 years ago, 8 years, or well, actually, sorry, my math's off, 9 years ago now, roughly. And all of these people seem to gloss over the fact that every time they blame the right, you can take a look at exactly what they're doing by what they are blaming the right for. And one individual in This was the article that I got this from. This was again a tweet. It was pointed out in an article. I've got the link below, but this is by The Hill, and The Hill is a left-leaning organization. Okay, left-leaning news outlet completely. But take a look at this real quick. And if we look at this, this is Senator Dick Durbin, who is by all means a leftist Dem. Okay. And this is the quote that he has. Senator Dick Durbin, the demographics of America are not on the side of the Republican Party. The new voters in this country are moving away from them, away from Donald Trump, away from their party creed that they preach. And I have this clip right here, and I want to go ahead and play it for you real quick so you can hear it in his own words. This isn't just somebody quoting him. This is in his own words. Now, to give you a little bit of background, this was a speech that he was giving on the floor sometime around, right after the 2020 election, the January 6th ratification of it, because of the fact that he in the clip that I've taken, the parts that